Ellen. Once again, to introduce myself, my name is Bharat Sanka. I'm an ODAC, Organization Awareness Corporation Public Relations Fellow, and we're just having this interview here today just to raise awareness about organ donation and hear about your experiences in terms of organ donation and the process and really raising awareness for the topic and advocating for it. So just to begin, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and just your background and how it relates a little bit to organ donation?
Sure. I uh, where to start? I had lived a very active life. Very interested in sports and outdoor activities and so forth. And in let's see the year in around 2010, I guess, I started to feel some issues when my heart rate would go up a lot. So if I was walking up a steep hill, or I think I first noticed it playing tennis, if I had a sudden spike in my heart rate, I would start to feel faint and have some chest pain. And I saw doctors about it, and it turned out that I had a medical situation called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a fancy word to say the center wall of the heart's a little too thick, and the leaflets of the mitral valve are a little too long, and so that when the blood pressure and heart rate goes up quickly, that leaflet can kind of get trapped against the wall, and it causes a blood outflow restriction, and then you're not getting blood to the brain. That's why you feel faint. The heart contracts. That's why you have pain. And it's probably doctors felt that I probably had this condition my whole life, but as you get older, your organs, just like every other part of your body, stiffen a little bit. And that's why symptoms didn't occur until then. And we were able, though, my wonderful cardiologist was able to find a mixture of medications that mitigated the problem. And some, I learned to warm up more slowly, and I was able to manage the problem. And with a few lifestyle changes, I was able to live with it. And over the years, we'd have to change the medication and so forth. But then in 2019, I began to have these symptoms much more frequently, much more severely. And the cardiologists at that point felt they were out of tricks. There was no more getting around this with medication. And unless I wanted to be sedentary, I needed to have surgery. And I sought out the top surgeons for doing this kind of thing, interviewed them, and picked one with an international reputation. And so we scheduled the heart valve surgery. When I went to the hospital, I was completely confident. I had found the top doctor, whereas any open heart surgery is very serious. I was totally confident, and went in on a Monday morning. I was expecting to leave on the hospital on Friday, have a 2 or 3 month recovery, and then be back to tennis and softball and my woodworking hobby and all of those kinds of things. So I went into the surgery on a Monday morning, and when I regained consciousness, which I believe was maybe Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, it's hard for me to remember exactly, I learned that I had had a surgery, and that they thought was successful. And then that while I was still unconscious, they determined that there was bleeding going on where the surgery had occurred. So they went back in again and did another surgery. And they hoped to, I just have to stop my phone from ringing. They did another surgery to patch it, and they thought they had patched it successfully. I had no awareness of any of this at the time. But then again, some number of hours later, that was leaking. They went back in again. And when they went back in again, they found that the center wall of my heart was essentially no longer viable. It was essentially there was no center wall of my heart left. So at that point, the choice my wife had to deal with was let me die or see if they could find a heart transplant, which was the only way I was going to live. So luckily for me, she chose the latter. They put me on a machine called an ECMO machine, which oxygenates and pumps the blood. And I was very fortunate that I was able to really thrive on that machine. It was, and not everyone is that fortunate, but it worked well for me. And when I regained consciousness and all this was explained to me, and it was clear that my only chance to live was to have the heart transplant. So I agreed. And I was because I was at that level of get a heart or die. I guess my priority went up to the top of the list. And amazingly, they were able to identify a heart in about a day. They were able to, I guess, secure it to evaluate it in another day. And I was able to have the transplant surgery that Saturday. So it was quite an experience. The experience in the hospital was interesting. My wife was there all the time. My daughter had flown in from California to be with me, and look at it. Nobody said it exactly, but we knew that this was not, a slam dunk. That just because they had the heart, this was going to work. Because I had been through, I don't know, many hours of major surgery. I had been on general anesthesia for many hours. So it wasn't clear. And at first we were told that the surgery was going to happen Saturday morning. Then we were told Saturday afternoon. And then I think around 5 o'clock, we were told it would happen in an hour. We've noticed that there's time and then there's hospital time. So hospital time, if something is going to happen in an hour, that means it could happen anywhere from an hour and a half to 3.5 hours. They just have a lot to do in hospitals. And so when they told us it would be another hour, my wife asked me, what did I want to do? And, I was thinking, this could be my last hour. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. And she said, do you want to watch TV or what do you want to do? And both my wife and my daughter have lovely singing voices. So I asked them to sing. So they sang everything that we could think of. They sang rock and roll songs. They sang folk songs. They sang, Broadway show songs. It was really exhilarating, and people were coming down the hall to hear, to see what was going on. It was really uplifting, and it actually put me in I was in an upbeat mood as they were wheeling me to the operating theater, whatever it was, an hour and a half later or so. To be alive from the ICU to the operating theater, this ECMO machine had to be running on batteries, and it's a powerful machine. It's not like 3 AAAs. It's a serious thing, and there is some elevator inside the hospital that you had to take, a specialized elevator. And when we got there, it wasn't the doctor who was with me called for it, and it didn't come immediately. And he got on the phone, and I heard him, hollering that I was on battery and that this elevator had to come. And I remember thinking, am I going to die in an elevator? I mean, what, it was, obviously the elevator came. They got me to the operating theater. In a few minutes you're put out. And when I woke up, I had a new heart. And that was in April of 2019. And they did a great job. It seems to be a wonderful heart. I was able to go back and start playing table tennis by August. So that was just a few months later. I started to do a little light exercise. by the fall, I was playing tennis and softball, albeit easily, not pushed to the limit, but pretty remarkable given where I was that I was able to do that. And I don't really have any physical restrictions now. I do my woodworking hobby. I play a variety of sports. Um, uh, this that I had this surgery in April. My first grandson was born in June, just about 2 months later. And this past August, my granddaughter was born. So it's because of the heart transplant that I've been able to know them and be aware of them. So it's been an amazing experience, and I'm very, very grateful. And I think that if people realized that if they or a loved one needed an organ transplant, that they would just be begging for the availability, and that there are thousands of people who are begging. Now, in my case, I went from not having I didn't know anything about organ donation really until I woke up in the hospital and needed it. But that's not like most people. Most people, they have a heart defect of some sort or problem, um, uh, or a kidney or pancreas or whatever the organ is, and they get sicker, but they're not so sick to make it to the top of the priority list, so they have to wait and wait and wait. And some of them, the time runs out because there just is so much more demand than supply. And I think if most people realized, how much they would want it for themselves or their loved ones, and that it costs nothing to be a deceased donor. Live donation is another discussion, but I think they would think more differently about it. But I think there's lots of myths that put people off, lots of lack of trust that put people off, lots of just lack of awareness that put people off. And so as a result, we have, whatever it is, 110,000 people on waiting lists around the country. And that's really, really sad. And I love the fact that Donate Life and its sister organizations around the country celebrate the donors, because they're the ones that allow people like me to live. So let me stop there and answer any questions.
Yeah, of course. No, that was a very truly moving and touching story. Thank you so much, and I completely agree with you. There's often there can be a stigma even against organ donation in some cases. So you mentioned Donate Life, New York State. Do you feel like your large experience with organ donation really pushed you into working with them? And so what's the type of advocacy work that you do in terms of raising awareness or advocating for organ donation with them?
Well, I do a couple of things. With Donate Life New York, I participate with them when they meet with the legislators in order to continue to having funding to operate the registry, and a variety of legislative acts that open up the opportunity to for people to enroll or register, and also things, the ability to have vehicles to transport organs, so we're not dependent on emergency vehicles. So that's one thing that I do, and we meet with the legislators twice. One during, I guess, the early session has to do with basic budgeting, and then the second one has to do with specific legislative requests that are made. So it is nice to be able to try to get this awareness into the government. With Live On New York, which is a separate organization that has to do with the procurement of an allocation of the organs, I've done a few things. I had learned that, which is something I didn't know at all, that in the Jewish population, and I happen to be Jewish, there are a number of myths that are widely held that discourage people from registering. And so when I learned that, I learned about it, and I spoke with the individual at Live on New York who was involved in community engagement, who happens to be a rabbi. And when the problem was explained, and this was in the middle of the pandemic, so having in-person meetings or lectures just was not possible then. I organized an online, essentially, discussion, and I lined up that Rabbi Pearl from Live on New York to talk about the issues and dispel the myths. My own rabbi spoke. He had a personal connection because his niece had been killed in a car accident, and he engaged with his brother and family in determining to allow her organs to be made available for transplant. So he spoke, and I told my own story, and we advertised this among all of the synagogues in Westchester County where I live, and we had something like 160 registrations, and did this in an evening. So I felt that was one example of trying to get the message out. Subsequently, there was another similar online and in-person event that was run by another synagogue that I participated in making happen. And I've done some speaking when invited about my situation, and also a lot of the term that they use is tabling, where you set up a table and you have registration forms, and you invite people over for whatever it is. We've done it in the hospital lobby. We recently did it for the employees at the Sing Sing prison in Ossining, to tell them about it and try to encourage them. So those are some of the things that I've done. I've written up my story and submitted it to both Live on New York and Donate Life, so that they can use it in pamphlets and things. And I also did at the Jewish High Holidays, where we had many people there, I think about 1,200 people. And this was actually, my surgery was in April of 2019, and this was in September of that year. They allowed me to give a short talk on my experience. So it gave me the opportunity to create awareness. And also thanks, because I had gotten a lot of support from my own synagogue during my struggles and during my recovery. So those are some of the kinds of things I've been involved in. And when I heard about your organization, I was just, first of all, delighted to see young people focused on this. I certainly wasn't at your age. I really knew almost nothing about it. Though I do have the excuse, I don't think they were doing it when I was your age. I think I think the first one done was in 68 or 9. So
Yeah.
any rate, those are some of the kinds of activities, and anything that your organization is doing that I can help with, I'd be delighted to participate in.
Yeah, of course. I think definitely one of the niches that ODAC is definitely trying to fill is definitely targeting, we're all college students, targeting the younger student demographic, because often a lot of kids, they sign up to be organ donors when they get their driver's license, when they're still young. So definitely that's been one of the big things that we pride ourselves in terms of filling that niche. Just to kind of further like contextualize kind of how your organ donation experience has kind of changed you. What have you found was the hardest part of being an organ recipient? Has it been like taking immunosuppressants? Has it been like the recovery process? Yeah.
Well, there's a variety of things. I have to say, initially, it was a very emotional experience.
Yeah.
As I said, I had I knew virtually nothing about organ donation before this happened. And I'm ashamed to say I was not a registered organ uh, donor. And I have no excuse for that. I mean, uh, and so I initially I felt a tremendous amount of guilt, um, and uh, uh, and I had this self doubt that I really wasn't worthy of receiving it because of that. And it took a while to kind of come around to feeling that, well, I since I'm alive, I didn't have any opportunity to donate organs yet. I registered as soon as I was able to, and doing the kinds of activities that we just talked about. I kind of hope that makes up for it. But the initial period, one aspect of it was that guilt. Um, Early on, when you're lying in a hospital bed, you have tubes coming out of you all over. Um, I, I didn't, I did not have much confidence that I would be able to do any of the things that were important to me. So I didn't know I'd be, to what extent I would recover. Um, and it was very tough on the outset because I felt I was a burden to my wife and friends. I needed to be driven places. I couldn't contribute in any meaningful way to the house, and I found all of that very difficult to deal with. But my recovery was remarkable. Even the doctors felt that it was quite amazing. I had a stress test just I don't know a month or maybe 6 weeks after the surgery, and they put you on a treadmill, and I was able to stay on the thing for 15 or 16 minutes, which is typical what a 30-year-old would be able to do. So it was just remarkable. I had cardiac rehab. There was a facility near where I live that was wonderful. The people there were great, and and they have monitors on you, so that the treatment experience was amazing. It's no fun taking all of these pills, that's for sure, but it's not the worst thing in the world either. I have to, I've had to change my lifestyle to be more careful. So I have to, because of the medication, I'm more prone to cancer. So I have to be, very careful with the sun, greased up, wear hats long, I wear long sleeves when I'm playing sports outside and that sort of thing. But that's pretty small price to pay. It's I've heard a lot of complaints about it. In the first year and a half, I had to go frequently for biopsies where they actually go in and inspect the heart tissue. So those are days in the hospital. It's not pleasant, but again, it was only in the first year and a half, 2 years. Now there's a blood test that correlates to rejection. So with those blood tests, as long as they look good, I haven't had a biopsy in a long time. I do annually have to have a bunch of tests and things, but when I consider my health as compared to people I know my age, I feel I'm in very good shape. Maybe probably healthier than most. So that adjustment's been was not that difficult. I think probably the biggest change is the appreciation for life, and I think I probably took a lot for granted before this experience. And you have the attitude, maybe I had the attitude of, I deserve to be healthy. And then if there's anything that's, whether it's a sore ankle or broken collarbone or whatever, that's, how could this happen to me? And now I kind of look at it as what a gift it is. If you wake up in the morning, that's a gift. That day is a gift. What can you do to give other people that gift? How can you appreciate the gift of life? And so I think it has changed my outlook on life significantly. So from that standpoint, it was a good thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's truly amazing that you were able to reclaim so much of everything that you were able to do like before you had the transplant. It's truly an amazing story. Kind of like looking forward, what part of your journey would you wish, or even like what would you say to like young adults or even like other people that are considering becoming an organ donor?
Well, I would say that uh, you really have, nothing to lose and the opportunity to give the greatest gift possible. And it costs you nothing, and you will be hoping and praying for it if you need it, or if someone you love or someone you know needs it, you'd be praying for it. If you just have to, if you know someone who's suffering with, say, dialysis, and the difficulty of what that does, and that if there were an available kidney, that person has a good chance of living a very normal life, but can't. If everyone were to contribute, we wouldn't have that problem. There'd be very few people in that situation. So, we have lots of problems in this world that there's no solution for. Here's a problem that it seems like there is a solution. We just need to get the buy-in from enough people to make it happen. And hopefully there'll be breakthroughs in technology that make it easier. But right now, they're more likely to happen in terms of the kinds of medications that can be used. And I know I was doing tabling with another heart recipient, and he's on a medication where he only has to take one pill a day. I take them multiple times a day. So there are being advances that continue to happen. I think we're a long way off from mechanical solutions. People have been working on that for a long time, maybe at some point in the future. But in the meantime, you can be a hero just by signing your name. I think that's what I try to tell people, and hope some number of them listen.
Yeah, definitely. I think engaging with your community, just like you said you've done, is really an amazing way to kind of spread awareness about organ donation. We here at ODAC definitely try to do similar things with engaging with the college communities, engaging with young adult communities, to really ensure that the organ donation process, whether it's kidney transplants, whether it's bone marrow donation, they're really becoming people are becoming knowledgeable about them. And
yeah, that's great to hear. One of the thoughts about it is that there are lots of people who are reluctant to register to give. There are very few people who need an organ who are reluctant to accept it. And it's kind of if there's that dichotomy just doesn't hold. If you want it when you need it, then you should be willing to give it when you no longer need it. But look, people have. I don't want to make light of people's concerns. There are some small segments of valid religious beliefs, but it's largely misunderstood. All of the major religions, for the large part, support registering for deceased organ donation.
Yeah, definitely. Just kind of as a last wrap-up question, are there any projects or events that you like to kind of share or plug, coming from the two organizations that you're part of?
Well, when there are opportunities, there's lots of opportunities to do this tabling that I described, and I do them from time to time. I do think that those are really reach out a small number of people. There's a general awareness to see the booth, but generally people they pass a table. We've all seen them for all kinds of things, whether it's kids raising money for their prom or something like this. And you can get some number of people, but it's a very small percentage. When there's an opportunity to speak in a forum where people are there to listen, I think you have a much better chance of affecting people. I mentioned when I had spoken on the high holidays to a very large group, a very significant number of people came up to me afterwards and said that they hadn't thought about it that way before, and they were going to go out and register. And so I think that that forum is a more powerful lever to pull, and I wish that there were more of them for me and other people. Also, I think that it's donor families probably have the most compelling story to tell to people, because after all, they're registering to be a donor. They're not registering to be a recipient. So those stories are very, very powerful, and I am very appreciative of the donor families that will make it make the effort, which is a very emotional one, to tell their story and encourage people to do what someone in their family has done.
Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely. That's about all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down and talk about organ donation and your previous experience and your story.
Thank you, Bharat. I was delightful to talk to you, and I really appreciate you and all of ODAC for taking this issue on. I think I think for young people to register, they're more likely to relate to other young people, and so it's just fabulous that ODAC exists and that dedicated people like you are making this effort. So I thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. And once again, thank you for spending the time today.
Sure.